Good morning, welcome to my channel. My name is David Okon. Thank you everybody who have been subscribing to my channel. If you have liked, if you have shared with family and friends, click notification bell and left a comment and viewed my channel, my videos, and I'm grateful. I'm also grateful if you did not do anything. If it is your first time today, thank you for watching this video, for supporting my channel. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I'm talking about the cost of living, because the cost of living as a crisis is a very important aspect of our life today in this modern world, and it is the beginning of things to happen in the future. It's a function of poverty in Britain, in the United Kingdom, across the globe, everywhere, wherever you are. If you're suffering the cost of living as a crisis, it means you normally work for a living or you're not working at all. It's an income problem, which needs the government to intervene in favor of the many of the world, and the few of the world do not suffer the cost of living crisis because they are multimillionaires and multi-billionaires. If you are not a multimillionaires and multi-billionaires in terms of the economy, in terms of economic activity like employment or other forms of income like self-employment, you are working, you're self-employed, small and medium business, then you are actually a poor person. A lot of the time people do not realize they are poor until they hit a crisis. So the crisis of the cost of living should be an opportunity for you to realize your status in terms of income, in terms of poverty, in terms of resource access. The reason of the primary reason for the cost of living is that because the government shut down the public sector in every country. That is now the political agenda. You will see the disappearance of public services. Although the government now say they are providing public services via private companies, they are actually not doing that, because private companies are not designed to provide public service. So it is either disingenuously dishonest or pure ignorance. I don't know about you, but some of these people are supposed to be very clever. People who run our countries are all graduates from universities. Most of them are multimillionaires. Like Donald Trump in America was a multi-billionaire. So it's not really new that a billionaire has been a politician. Today we're going to talk about the United Nations, and we are going to link that to the cost of living, because the United Nations is a part of the global economy. You could say it's a political economic infrastructure. It represents the different countries, different governments. It's like a nation. United Nations is our nations who are united. And it has a flag, blue and white. It has also an emblem depicting the globe and other things. There are members of the United Nations. There are headquarters. The headquarters of United Nations actually 760 United Nations Plaza, Manhattan, New York City, United States International Zone. So the headquarters is actually New York, at Manhattan, New York City, United States of America International Zone. Official languages are including Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, Spanish. These are actually the key United UN languages. Russia, Chinese, English, French, Russian, Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, Spanish. So the type of institution that United Nations is intergovernmental organization, which means you talk about government, relationship between government is called intergovernmental organization. So it is composed, the institutional content of the United Nations is actually many governments coming together to form a united government, a one government. So in this sense, the United Nations is a central function of globalization. Globalization, as we saw in the other video, include governments, world government coming together. So membership, there are 193 member states and 2 observer states. There are governments who are members, there are governments who are observers. The leaders of the United Nations include Secretary General, which is at the heart. The current one is Antonio Guterres. Deputy Secretary General is Amina J. Mohammed. General Assembly, Denis Francis, President of the General Assembly. General Assembly is probably something, it's a parliament of the United United Nations. So General Assembly, the president there, he has the president. It's in parliament, it's parliament as a president. And it's called Lashezara Stova. Leave a comment below if you can pronounce it properly. So you have Social Council, president. There are different councils. Social Council is like things to do with social policy, employment. So it's consistent with the cost of living. The United Nations is consistent with the cost of living crisis. So if there is a cost of living crisis, it means the United Nations is also globally, it is responsible for it. Because if you have a social council, which means is actually a unit responsible for things like welfare, education, health, poverty, environment, food, energy, and social infrastructures, like you name it. So that's what United Nations does. It has a social council, and its president is there also. It has a security council. If there is a security problem in your country, then the United Nations is partly responsible. They are supposed to solve those problems because it is a type of government, international government. Actually, let me just take a look right here. The Social Council, the General Assembly President is actually Denis Francis. Denis Francis is the President of Parliament of the United Nations. But there is another council which is also a sub-parliament, a sub-unit. It's like a government, it's an executive branch, administrative unit of the United Nations. When you talk about council, it's an hybrid, because it deals with policy, it also deals with politics, it deals with discussion also, like councils, like where people meet and talk. So it's a combination of something like a parliament, something like a government, something like a civil service administrative unit. So that's what the council is. Is a conglomeration of all these features. So the United Nations has the Council for Economic and Social Issues. So if the economy is suffering, which also relates to the cost of living, the United Nations globally is responsible. So they should answer, they should tell us why there is the cost of living, and they should talk to world governments to change from privatizing public sector to private sector. So that is what the United Nations should be doing. That's what they should be doing. They should be telling world governments, their member states, to stop privatizing public sector and restore the public sector as businesses to provide public services. And that's why the cost of living is there. If that changes and the government begins to finance the public sector in terms of capital, infrastructure, and revenue, then there will be no poverty. And if there is no poverty, the cost of living doesn't become a crisis. And that's because there is poverty. The poverty is created by low income or lack of providing, social infrastructure, welfare infrastructure. That's why there is a problem. There are pressures because people have to spend a lot of money on energy and food. People have to spend a lot of money on housing, on transportation, healthcare, you name it, energy, water. And like I said in the other videos, I think it is a mistake for modern governments because there is a lot of wealth with technology also. Food should be free globally. United Nations, which should be responsible for providing food in Africa, in the Middle East, in other parts of the world, especially where there is poverty. The United Nations is failing in its work duty because of the cost of living. The cost of living is evident for many things. And that's why I'm looking at different infrastructure of the state, which the United Nations is part of the state, the global state. And so what it fails to do features in factors such as the cost of living crisis. And people should need to understand this because, like I said before, if you're suffering from something and the cost of living crisis is not going to stop, it's going to get worse and worse. It's probably going to take 10 years before it stabilizes. When it stabilizes, it means people have adjusted. It doesn't mean things are going to improve. People will adjust to live with adverse conditions. And if you used to spend more money on holiday because of the cost of living, you're going to need to cut down on food, energy. If you're sick, you have to really look for alternatives which are cheaper. You have to learn how to manage your money. Budgeting is going to be a fundamental approach to managing poverty. You cannot do anything other than that. If you do that, you're going to poverty is going to kill you. A lot of people are committing suicide. Commit suicide if you want to. But I said it doesn't matter how bad the situation is. I don't think you should commit suicide. Committing suicide is not the solution. It's a form of violence, and people who commit suicide are actually horrible people because they don't think about other people. They talk about cultural economy. New cultural economy involves the United Nations, the European Union, and other international organizations. Because I'm talking about globalization, the cultural system globally. And if we are educated, we begin to value our lives beyond money and wealth. Even if we are suffering, we still persevere. And if you want to talk about self-confidence or resilience, perseverance, you name it, it means you value your life. You value the life of people you live with. You don't just think about yourself, you think about other people. It is false cultural economy. To be thinking about yourself all the time. You're not a wizard, you're not a witch, you're not stupid, you're a clever person. So think about yourself, yes. Look after yourself, but think about the people around you. Believe they are not your family. And that's why in a place like the United Kingdom, I've been speaking about the United Kingdom recently. I live in the United Kingdom. We call each other strangers. I was so shocked the first time I came into Britain. You speak to people, sometimes people pass by thinking you want something from them. Because in Africa, when I came here many years ago, I know things are changing in Africa now. But when I came in the United Kingdom, I behaved as if I was in Africa. When I got into a bus or a train, I went where people are and sat with people. Sometimes people, at that time, the buses were mostly, because they were publicly managed, buses were mostly traveling empty all the time. So if there are plenty of seats, you go and sit, especially if you're a black person, you sit near a woman. They think you want to rob them. I didn't know that. Because in Africa, you don't sit the way people here sit. At that time, when I came from Africa, it was really rude. When you find people, you go and sit with them. Like in a beach, like in the park. No, you can't do that now. I've learned that the hard way. It was part of cultural shock. Because Africans are very different from Europeans. and Americans, and because Europeans influence the rest of the, the West and the East. The developed world are actually mainly European influence, but they have now successfully managed to influence Africa, because Africa is also growing economically and also technologically. The bigger the size of people concentrating in cities and towns, the more of strangers they become. That means they lose sense of humanity. They focus more on wealth. People in Africa now think about wealth more probably than the people in the developed world. That wasn't the case. People used to think of people more. No, if people died, people went to mourn the dead and not going to work, because to show that you value people more than work. But now, because of economic system, modern economic system, you don't work, your employer is going to ask you to leave. You cannot take 1 month to mourn your dead in the modern economy. If people hear what I'm saying, they think I'm totally insane to even think that an employer is going to give me a full week to mourn my child, my husband. Mourning in Africa goes for months, or used to. Not now, because Africa has changed. They have caught up with the modern economy, which means simply modernity in terms of culture means it has been left behind. The culture has been devalued. Development has been valued over and beyond people. That means wealth, things are being valued more than people. I've been talking about this up and on, and I also said I'm going to talk about it anyway. Let's come back to looking at the system of the United Nations, and as always, they are quite similar, and the impact on the cost of living crisis similarly. That's why I'm talking about all these other institutions. And if I feel people haven't got what I'm talking about, I will go start all over again. That may be next year, because this year is coming to an end. This program has been 10 months now, and it has been very slow and painful, and I've done a lot of work. I've learned the hard way to wait for until the channel grows. I'm so happy that I started this program, because I created this channel in 2012. I did nothing. I didn't have any subscribers at all. Nobody even watched my video. I didn't even have any video. I had maybe 2 or 3 videos, and they were not even my video. Because I just copying videos and putting it on my channel. Now it changed immediately. I took responsibility to take it seriously, to use it for productive purpose other than for just entertainment. I'm not saying entertainment is not productive. It's good to use YouTube for entertainment, but it's also good. I think it's better to get to get entertainment and also do what you are passionate for. What you want to do. Use YouTube to promote what you believe in. Like I am now speaking, this is what I believe in. I believe in humanity, and there are things I've been discussing, very serious topic, and I'm getting better by the day by doing it. Practice makes perfect. So I've been attempting. I'm actually, the thing with YouTube, if you stop posting video for even a week, sometimes you have to go for 4 weeks without even realizing you haven't posted a video, and the channel dies immediately. And that's what happened to my channel recently. I felt sick, and I wasn't actually producing video, and my channel stopped. Now I'm trying to bring it back again by posting video every day, and my videos are very complicated to produce, and they are also complicated to follow. They are really, there's very minimum entertainment in my channel, in my topic. The topics I'm now pursuing, there's virtually no entertainment. There's just education, and I'm not even sure I'm actually educating people effectively now. But that is not my issue now. My issue is now to carry on doing this and do the things I'm passionate about. how the system works, and how it impacts people. So my picking up the cost of living as a crisis because this is of interest to me, using this platform to draw the attention to the real world, that if you work for a living, you're poor. Because a lot of people think if you're middle class, if you can borrow money and buy a house, borrow money, buy a new car, you're living in a 4 or 5 bedroom house, you're paying for it every month, you have a job. You don't realize at all because you live like a rich person. Living like a rich person doesn't mean you are rich. It just means you are lucky. Sheer luck. And the job you're doing, probably a lot of people are actually competing for it. And if you do something wrong, you may lose the job. And normally when people lose a lucrative job, they don't want to get a lower level job. But that is impractical. If you're doing a job where you get £300,000, that is a lot of money to get from a job. In the UK, on average, people get about 40,000 on average, 40,000 per annum, and that's even an overestimation. People get paid very less. Actually, if you even look at the realistic income components, the context of income in the UK, you find that probably some people literally work for no pay. Because you see, if you cannot save, then you don't work, you don't get paid. Literally, because you only work for the bills. You pay, first of all, you are taxed. And what is left? On average, people who are low income actually are earning 1,500, 1,200 per month. About 12 or 13 or 14, 15,000 pounds per annum. That is a really little amount of money to earn as a left. And then soon as you get that, you're going to spend most of it on paying rent. If you're renting, most people are renting from the government. So we have social housing in the UK and also maybe in other parts as well. I've been talking about all these things in the other videos. My viewership is really low, so I don't know if people have been learning anything from the previous videos. My hope is that when the end of the year, probably more people will start looking. And I don't mind from next year to start recycling the topic I talked about this year over and again, producing new videos on the same topic, because the cost of living will still be there. But if another topic arises next year, then I'll be talking about it. But I'm so excited that about the privileges to do this. I'm not yet editing my video fully, and I spoke to a friend who came here yesterday, an engineer, a computer engineer. He was coming to help me with 1 or 2 things on my system. So if I'm lucky, he's going to help me recommend some good editing features of materials to install on my system so that I can use my laptop and things like that to edit my video. That would be really helpful. And so fingers crossed, maybe before the end of the month, he will help me to get that thing and then put it here on my system. So let us continue with the United Nations. We'll talk about Economic and Social Council. Like I said, the economy is about wealth and development. Social council, anything social is actually welfare, to do with hospital work. Your employment is a social function. Your employment, self-employment, if you things you do to support your life in the fundamental way, in the basic way, things like the cost of living is the result of social policy failure globally, because it's affecting people globally. And I've said a lot about this. I will be saying a lot more going forward. So the United Nations as its presidency, the Economic and Social Council president. The president there is actually La Cesara Stova. The Security General Assembly, the president is actually Dennis Francis. So we have Security Council itself, for the Council for Security. The president is actually is called Brazil. The president is not called Brazil, but the presidency is in Brazil. So probably Brazilian is the president. The name, I haven't seen the name yet. That is from October 2023, which is quite new. I think probably I don't know, because the president is in Brazil. So establishment is actually in the structure, the institutions, the infrastructures, and all the things. The United Nations, the establishment called the United Nations Charter, which is signed on the 26th of June 1945, 78 years ago. So when we talk about establishment, it means the setup, the setting, the setup, how it is set, how it is rooted, how it is planted, how it is developed. So we talk about charter. These are actually institutional infrastructure to set up the United Nations. So the United Nations Charter is extremely important. So charter entered into force it was signed in 1945, 78 years ago, on June the 26th. That was when it was signed. So it came into force. The charter entered into force on the 24th of October 1945, 77 years ago, 1 year after it was signed. So that was the establishment of these instruments. So let's look at the population. This is a 2016 estimate of the United Nations. These are actually nations who are signatories to the United Nations. There are 7.4 million people. 7.4 billion actually. 7.4 billion people. Roughly, there are 7.4. Almost every country in the world are members of the United Nations. So it is correct to say the UN is the most powerful country in the world. It's the most relevant even now. In my opinion, it's taking over NATO even and all the other international bodies. So the UN is actually gaining in strength. It's a government which is going to be responsible for globalization, and the European Union is going to be the driver of globalization. And I think the government, the presiding government, is going to be the United Nations. So we have the UN.org, which is actually the internet fingerprinting. The website. Talking about the UN website. So use UN.com, not UN.org. It's the general. So UN.int, International Permanent Mission. Actually, these are actually units which are actually international. They are actually on the ground in different countries. They are assigned as units. They're called missions. These are infrastructure which are actually functional across the globe. UN.int. So this is preceded by the League of Nations. The United Nations used to be called the League of Nations. The League means actually communion, the community of union of nations. So the Union of Nations, they're using the word union, United Nations. So the United Nations is an intergovernmental organization whose stated purposes are to maintain international peace and security, develop friendly relations among nations, achieve international cooperation, and serve as a center for harmonizing the action of nations. So, like I said before, it's intergovernmental. It means governments of the world are actually working with each other, sharing power, sharing responsibility and duties globally. It's part of globalization, like I said. The purpose are to maintain the international peace and security. So we'll talk about peace. And I've argued elsewhere that peace as a function surrounding in development and culture. So the United Nations should be an expert on development and also culture. Culture actually means people talk to each other like civil people instead of fighting. So the function of peace and security is achievable if the United Nations actually supervise development and culture, and in terms of security and the military, food security, energy security. So because of failure of food and energy security, and also social security like work, people working don't get paid well. So social security has failed. That's why there's a cost of living crisis. And national security and failure of peace, where people are fighting in Ukraine, people are fighting in other parts of Syria, and we have crises such as the COVID-19. All these factors are actually functions affecting peace and security. And also, part of the purpose for the United Nations is to develop friendly relations among nations. That means people actually talk to each other like family, friends, and it's a question whether that is working. Probably it's working, but I don't know what the United Nations do. If you know, leave a comment below. But the record of global relations, talk about friendship. Why is Ukraine fighting Russia? What is the United Nations doing? Now, why is America and Europe sending firearms to Ukraine, or even China supporting Russia militarily? Which means they want these people to fight. Why are they fighting? I say cultural failure, because it doesn't matter how rich you are, how much technology or knowledge you have. If you don't have the knowledge of people, you don't value people. The reason Ukraine and Russia are fighting, they have no respect for each other. They have no respect for anyone. Putin and Zelensky have no respect for people. America, Europe, Africa, the globe, there is no respect. So the culture has failed. And that's actually why we don't respect each other. I think cost of living is actually a type of warfare similar to what war is happening in Ukraine. This is a war of government against ordinary people, citizens of the world. So the enemy of the people are actually the state, because they are failing to support people out of poverty. In a world where wealth is so much that there is so much wealth that those who access wealth don't even know what to do. Those who do not have wealth are actually lying idle somewhere. It's a state. But the government is failing to get people out of poverty. I'm not asking the government to get people into wealth. I mean, people can get into wealth by themselves, but they cannot get into wealth if they're in poverty. It's actually never possible. It doesn't matter how you try. When you are trapped in poverty, you are trapped. Things like being on welfare benefits is one of the worst things which can happen to people. Things like working for an employer is a terrible thing, because you will never get out of poverty at all. I mean, at least if you are self-employed, and also if you're self-employed working as a small and medium business, there's a chance, there's hope that you might get, but because there are so many laws, there are so many factors, and if the government doesn't intervene, support employee and small and medium businesses, these people will be trapped in poverty forever. The problem is poverty. It's not wealth. People can get rich if they want to get rich, but people should not be in poverty. The cost of living is evidence of poverty across the globe. So the United Nations' other function is to achieve international cooperation. Cooperation means if you have power, you use your power to negotiate with other powers. The problem with these relationships is that in Africa, Africans are always at the receiving end of this relationship. Africans are actual members of the United Nations, but they are very weak. So when we talk of cooperation, is for Africa is actually obeying America, obeying Europe, obeying the developed world, obeying the United Nations, because they are powerless. The relationship doesn't work because one continent is rich, another continent is poor. Africa is poor. It cannot finance itself. Europe within the United Nations. The United Nations is a European power. The IMF and the World Bank is the one for financing Africa. Without that, because Africa cannot even raise taxes, because everyone is poor, there is no development. Lands in Africa are actually worthless, except in a few areas, which is another discussion. So culturally and developmentally, Africa is really struggling. But the developed world have developed more. But the problem with the developed world is that there's no people in the developed world. No one should be poor. Africa shouldn't be poor. There should be a system of actually allocating wealth to people in the areas of poverty to get people out of poverty, and that is in the government should nationalize the public sector globally, and the United Nations is responsible for that. It's a government. It's an international government. And also, it serves as the center of harmonizing the actions of the nation. Harmonization means if you do something in Europe, you do it elsewhere. So you kind of like try to, there's a word I want to use, but it's gone on my head. If you have one policy in Europe, more or less you're going to have similar policy, like capitalism, for example, privatization, for example. Basically in terms of the economy, you are focusing on capitalism. That is what in fact, you could say capitalism means, harmonization means capitalism. Turn the globe into a capitalistic economic system. That is what harmonization means. In short, a lot of experts are going to disagree with me, probably, or with me, may agree with me, but I don't see any other meaning. So it is the world's largest international organization. The UN is headquartered in New York City, in the United States, but with certain international extraterritorial privileges, and the organization has other offices in Geneva, Nairobi, Vienna, The Hague, where the International Court of Justice is headquartered. So it's headquartered, like we said, is in New York, and in the United States, but it also has extraterritorial privileges. Privilege means what other similar organizations have. The United Nations have certain advantages. They have privileges, and the organization has other offices in Geneva, Nairobi. Nairobi is in East Africa. Vienna, The Hague, where the International Court of Justice is headquartered. If you hear The Hague, it means people like the ICC, the International Court, the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, but also the ICC has been famously presiding over crimes against humanity under the supervision of the United Nations. And I don't know if it works the way it should work, but probably it's a work in progress. We'll wait and see what the United Nations is going to do. The UN was established after World War II with the aim of preventing future wars, and succeeded the League of Nations, which was characterized as ineffective. The reason it was changed, it was ineffective. I don't know what they really meant, because these things tend to be ineffective unless they are effective. So on the 25th of April 1945, 50 nations met in San Francisco, California for a conference and started drafting the UN Charter, which was adopted on the 25th of June 1945. The charter took effect on the 24th October 1945 when the United Nations began operations. The organization's objectives are as defined by its charter include maintaining international peace and security, protecting human rights, delivering humanitarian aid, promoting sustainable development, and upholding international law. And so, at its founding, the United Nations had 51 member states. As of 2023, it has 193, almost all of the world's sovereign states. There's a lot of people under the jurisdiction of the United Nations. The organization's mission to preserve world peace was complicated in its early decades due in part to Cold War tensions that existed between the United States and the Soviet Union and their respective allies. Its mission has included the provision of primarily unarmed military observers and light armed troops charged with primarily promoting monitoring, reporting, and confidence building roles. The United Nations membership grew significantly following widespread decolonization in the 1960s. Since then, 80 former colonies have gained independence, including 11 trust territories that are being monitored by the Trusteeship Council. By the 1970s, UN's budget for economic and social development programs vastly exceeded its spending on peacekeeping. After the end of the Cold War in 1991, the United Nations shifted and expanded its field operations, undertaking a wide variety of complex tasks. The United Nations has 6 principal operational organizations: the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the International Court of Justice, the United Nations Secretariat, and the Trusteeship Council, although the Trusteeship Council has been inactive since 1994. The United Nations system includes a multitude of specialized agencies, funds, and programs, including the World Bank Group, the World Health Organization, the World Food Program, UNESCO, and UNICEF. On paper, the United Nations aims within this area should prevent the cost of living crisis globally. I mean, it's not working, I say, because of privatizing the public sector. It doesn't matter what you do institutionally, legally, policy doesn't really help. You have to nationalize the system of delivering and administering social policy, which is actually to prevent poverty and also things like the cost of living crisis. Additionally, non-governmental organizations may be granted consultative status with the Economic and Social Council and other agencies. The United Nations Chief Administrative Officer is the Secretary General, currently Portuguese politician and diplomat Antonio Guterres, who began his first 5-year term on the 1st January 2017 and was re-elected on the 8th June 2021. The organization is financed by assessed and voluntary contributions from its member states. So countries of the world finance the United Nations. Its members, which actually different governments and nations, are the ones financing the United Nations. The United Nations, its officers and its agencies have won many Nobel Prize, Peace Prizes, though other evaluations of its evaluations of its effectiveness have been mixed. Some commentators believe the organization to have the to be an important force for peace and human development, while others have called it ineffective, biased, and corrupt. I say any negative involving a government, whether national or international, the negative is actually the result of cultural failure. The history of the United Nations, with background predating 1941. In the century prior to the United Nations creation, several international organizations such as the International Committee of the Red Cross were formed to ensure protection and assistance for victims of armed conflicts and strife. People have been fighting all the time. Nations have been fighting nations. Serious wars, violence. And that's how the United Nations was created. Through, the built on infrastructures of third sectors such as Red Cross, International Committee of Red Cross. The International Committee of Red Cross is probably still operating under the United Nations banner, but probably they're also independent. During World War I, several major leaders, especially American President Woodrow Wilson, has advocated for a world body to guarantee peace. The winners of the war, the Allies, met to decide on formal peace terms at the Paris Peace Conference. The League of Nations was approved and started operations, but the United States of America never joined. On the 10th January 1920, the League of Nations formally came into being when the Covenant of the League of Nations of States, ratified by 42 nations in 2019, took effect. The League of Council acted as an executive body directing the Assembly's business. It began with 4 permanent members: the UK, France, Italy, and Japan. After some limited successes and failures during the 1920s, the League proved ineffective in the 1930s, and it failed to act against the Japanese invasion of Manchuria in 1933. 40 nations voted for Japan to withdraw from Manchuria, but Japan voted against it and walked out of the League instead of withdrawing from Manchuria. It also failed to act against the Second Italo-Ethiopian War when calls for economic sanctions against Italy failed. Italy and other nations left the League. When war broke out in 1939, the League closed down. Declaration by the Allies of World War II, 1941 to 1944. In 1943, sketch by Franklin Roosevelt of the UN Regional three branches: the 4 policemen and executive branch and the National Assembly of the UN member state. When you talk of policemen, you talk of security. You talk of executive branch, you talk of government. When you talk of International Assembly, you talk of international parliaments. To the United Nations. The first step toward the establishment of the United Nations was the Inter-Allied Conference that led to the declaration of St. James Palace on the 12th June 1941. I think that was in the UK. By August 1941, American President Franklin Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill drafted the Atlantic Charter, which defined goals for the post-war world. After the subsequent meeting of the Inter-Allied Council in London on the 24th September 1941, the 8 governments in exile of countries under Axis occupation, together with the Soviet Union and the representatives of the Free French forces, unanimously adopted adherence to the common principle of policy set forth by the UK, United Kingdom, and the United States. Roosevelt and Churchill met at the White House in December 1941 for the Acadia Conference. Roosevelt, considered the founder of the UN, coined the term United Nations to describe the Allied countries. Churchill accepted it and noting its use by Lord Byron. The text of the Declaration by United Nations was drafted on the 29th of December 1941 by Roosevelt, Churchill, and Harry Hopkins. These are the world leaders at that time. Incorporated Soviet suggestions, but included no role for France. One major change from the Atlantic Charter was the addition of a provision for religious freedom, which Stalin approved after Roosevelt insisted. Religion is a major part of global movement and progress. Roosevelt's idea of the four powers, referring to the four major Allied countries, the United States, the UK, the Soviet Union, China, emerged in the Declaration by the United Nations. On New Year's Day 1942, Roosevelt, Churchill, and the Soviet Union former Foreign Minister Maxim Litvinov and the Chinese Premier TV Snow signed the Declaration by the United Nations, and the next day the representative of the 22 other nations added their signatures. During the war, the United Nations became the official term for the Allies. In order to join, countries had to sign the declaration and declare war on the Axis powers. So the development of the United Nations in the face of it being an instrument of peace has actually participated in more wars than peace. And that actually is consistent with my argument in favor of the cultural economy as opposed to developmental economy. Warfare is part of the developmental economy, which is actually a competition for resources, for power, and the need to occupy a position of rule. Cultural economy involves valuing humanity. The October 1943 Moscow Conference resulted in the Moscow Declaration, including the Four-Power Declaration on General Security, which aimed for the creation of the earliest possible date of a general international organization. This was the first public announcement that a new international organization was being contemplated to replace the League of Nations. The Tehran Conference followed shortly afterward, at which Roosevelt, Churchill, and Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, met and discussed the idea of a post-war international organization. The new international organization was formulated and negotiated among the delegations from the Allied Big Four at the Dumbarton Oaks Conference from the 21st September to the 7th October 1944. They agreed on the proposal for the aim, structure, and functioning of the new organization. It took the conference at Yalta in February 1945 and further negotiation with Moscow before all the issues were resolved. The founding in 1945 of the United Nations and the United Nations in 1945, founding members in light blue, protectorates and territories of the founding members in dark blue, as shown in this photography. By the 1st March 1945, 21 additional states had signed the Declaration of the United Nations. After months of planning, the UN Conference on the International Organizations opened in San Francisco on the 25th of April 1945. It was attended by 50 nations, governments, and a member of non-governmental organizations. Non-governmental organizations, actually voluntary sector, is also referred as the third sector of the economy, as in terms of entities. The delegation of the Big Four chaired by plenary meetings. Churchill urged Roosevelt to restore France to its status of a major power after the liberation of Paris in August 1944. The drafting of the Charter of the United Nations was completed over the following 2 months, and it was signed on 26 June 1945 by the representatives of the 50 countries. The United Nations officially came into existence on the 24th of October 1945 until upon ratification of the Charter by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, the United Nations, the UK, France, and the Soviet Union and China, and by a majority of the other 46 nations. The first meetings of the General Assembly with 51 nations represented and the Security Council took place in London beginning in January 1946. Delegates began at once covering topical issues such as the presence of Russian troops in Iranian Azerbaijan and British forces in Greece. British diplomat Gladwin Jebb served as interim Secretary General. Secretary Generalship is at the apex of the United Nations echelon as in power. The most important role in the system in the organization is the Secretary General. The General Assembly selected New York City as the site for the headquarters of the United Nations. Construction began on the 14th September 1948 and the facility was completed on the 9th October 1942. If you live in Uganda, then Uganda attained its independence on the 9th of October, a couple of days, I think a couple of 4 days away from today. From today, we are going to have our annual celebration in Uganda when we got independence from Britain. It's similar to when the United Nations constructed its headquarters, when the construction of its headquarters in New York. As it was completed then on the 9th of October 1952. But Uganda got its independence 10 years later in 1962, if you're interested in our history in Africa. The Norwegian Foreign Minister Trygve Lie was elected as the first UN Secretary General. Jebb was only in the position until a permanent Secretary General was elected. Let's look at the Cold War between 1947 and 1991. Dag Hammarskjöld was a particularly active Secretary General from 1953 until he died in 1961. Though the United Nations primary mandate was peacekeeping, the division between the United States and the Soviet Union often paralyzed the organization, generally allowing it to intervene only in conflicts distant from the Cold War. Two notable exceptions were the Security Council resolution on the 7th July 1950, authorizing a US-led coalition to repel the North Korean invasion of South Korea, which was passed in the absence of the Soviet Union. And the signing of the Korean Armistice Agreement on the 27th of July. On the 29th of November 1947, the General Assembly approved a resolution to petition Palestine approving the creation of Israel. 2 years later, Ralph Bunche, a UN official, negotiated an armistice to the resulting conflict. On the 7th of November 1956, the first United Nations peacekeeping force was established to end the Suez crisis. However, the United Nations was unable to intervene against the Soviet Union's simultaneous invasion of Hungary following the country's resolution. On the 14th of July 1960, the United Nations established the United Nations Operations in the Congo for UNOC, the largest military force of its early decades, to bring order to Katanga, restoring to it the control of the December Republic of the Congo by the 11th May 1964. While traveling to meet rebel leader Moise Tshombe during the conflict, Dag Hammarskjöld, often named as one of the UN's most effective Secretary Generals, died in plane crash. What a shame. Months later, he was posthumously awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. In 1964, Hammarskjöld's successor, Hugh Stant, deployed the UN peacekeeping force in Cyprus, which would become one of the United Nations' longest-running peacekeeping missions. With the spread of decolonization in the 1960s, the organization membership shot up due to an influx of newly independent nations. In the 1960s alone, 17 new states joined the United Nations, 16 of them from Africa. On the 25th October 1971, with opposition from the United States but with the support of many third world nations, the People's Republic of China was given the Chinese seat on the Security Council in place of the Republic of China, also known as Taiwan. The vote was widely seen as a sign of waning American influence in the organization. 31 nations organized themselves into groups of 77 under the leadership of Algeria, which briefly became a dominant power at the United Nations. On the 10th of November 1975, a bloc comprising the Soviet Union and the Third World nations passed a resolution over strenuous American and Israeli opposition, declaring Zionism to be racism. The resolution was repealed on the 16th December 1991, shortly after the end of the Cold War. With an increasing Third World presence and the failure of United Nations mediation in conflict in the Middle East, Vietnam and Kashmir, the United Nations increasingly shifted its attention to its secondary goals of economic development and cultural exchange. By the 1970s, United Nations budget on social and economic development was far greater than its peacekeeping budget. Post-Cold War, 1997 to the 1991 to the present time. Kofi Annan, Secretary General from 1997 to 2006. Flag of member state at the United Nations headquarters seen in 2007. Remember, we said the headquarters of the United Nations is in New York City in America. After the Cold War, the United Nations showed a radical expansion in its peacekeeping duties, taking on more missions in 5 years than it had in the previous 4 decades. Between 1988 and 2000, the number of adopted Security Council resolutions more than doubled, and the peacekeeping budget increased by more than tenfold. The United Nations negotiated an end of the salvation of the Salvadoran civil war, launched the successful peacekeeping mission in Namibia, or an over democratic election in post-apartheid South Africa and post-Khmer Rouge Cambodia. Grant Urquhart, as the Under Secretary General of the United Nations 1971 to 1985, later described by the hopes raised by the successes as a false renaissance of the organization given the more troubled mission that followed. Beginning in the late last decade of the Cold War, critics of the UN condemned the organization for perceived mismanagement and corruption. In 1984, American President Ronald Reagan withdrew the United Nations funding from the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, over allegation of mismanagement, followed by the United Kingdom and Singapore. Boutros Ghali, the Secretary General from 1992 to 1996, initiated reform of the Secretariat, somewhat reducing the size of the organization. When you talk of size reduction, you're talking of efficiency saving, which actually is affecting the United Nations a lot more. Looking at the events across the globe, privatization is in privatizing the public sector, reducing the size of the economy, meaning the economy is being adjusted, realigned for the few, to benefit the few and not the many in the world. Though the UN Charter had begun written primarily to prevent aggression by one nation against another in the early 1990s, the United Nations faced several simultaneous serious crises within Somalia, Haiti, Mozambique, and the nations that previously made Yugoslavia. The United Nations mission in Somalia was widely viewed as a failure after the United Nations withdrawal from casualties in Battle of Mogadishu. The United Nations mission to Bosnia faced worldwide ridicule for the incisive and confused mission in the face of ethnic cleansing. In 1994, the United Nations Assistance Mission for Rwanda failed to intervene in the Rwandan genocide amid indecision by the Security Council. From the late 1990s to the early 2000s, international intervention authorized by the United Nations took a wider variety of forms. The United Nations Security Council resolution in 1244 authorized the nation-led Kosovo force beginning in 1999. The United Nations in the Sierra Leone Civil War was supplemented by a British military intervention. The invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 was overseen by NATO. In 2003, the United Nations invaded Iraq despite failing to pass a UN Security Council resolution for authorization, prompting a new round of questioning of the organization's effectiveness. Under the 8th Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, the United Nations intervened with peacekeepers in crises such as the war in Darfur, in Sudan, and the Kivu conflict in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and sent observers and chemical weapon inspectors to the Syrian civil war. In 2013, the international review of the United Nations action in the final battles of the Sri Lankan civil war in 2009 concluded that the organization had suffered as a systemic failure. In 2010, the organization suffered the worst loss of life in its history when 101 personnel died in the Haiti earthquake. Acting under the United Nations Security Council Resolution of 1973, in 2011, NATO countries intervened in the first Libyan civil war. The Millennium Summit was held in 2000 to discuss the United Nations role in the 21st century. The three-day meeting was the largest gathering of world leaders in history, and it culminated in the adoption by all member states of the Millennium Development Goals, or MDG, a commitment that achieved international development in areas such as poverty reduction, gender equality, and public health. Progress towards these goals, which were to be met by 2015, was ultimately uneven. The 2005 World Summit reaffirmed the United Nations focus on promoting development, peacekeeping, human rights, and global security. The Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, were launched in 2015 to succeed the Millennium Development Goals. In addition, when you talk about sustainable, it means it has been done efficiently. And that also means reduction in other sectors of the economy, minus technology. Because when we implement technology fully, then efficiency will be produced without reducing the capacity of development requirements or objectives. But when you talk of sustainability, you mean cuts in public sector. And also the beginning of closing down the global economy, only to leave a little, maybe 10 or 50% or 20% for those who can afford wealth. That is the direction of travel of capitalism. Capitalism is traveling in the direction where the economy is going to be shut down totally, replaced by technology which will run wealth. It's the difference between wealth and economy. Economy involves trade. Trade involves selling and buying, business in other words. But when you produce goods and services at no extra cost, it means the production of these goods and services will lead to the closure of the economy, the shutdown. But the wealth of the nation will be operational. The factors of wealth creation will be technologically based, with perhaps just a few, 1 or 2 human. Going forward, in the long future, maybe 50 to 100 years, you will begin to see these changes. You are beginning to see these changes. Some of the features of these changes are actually exhibited when you see the cost of living prices, which I'm talking about primarily. And I've been relating this with the rise of the machine in terms of, replacing human labor. And because I also said at the heart of welfare economy is actually employment and self-employment within the small and medium ranges. These exclude the multimillionaires and the multi-billionaires, because whether they work or not, their money work for them in the new global economy. Like I said, like I am now trying to illustrate under the United Nations. In addition to addressing global challenges, the UN has sought to improve its accountability and democratic legitimacy by engaging more with the civil society and fostering the global consistency. This is the idea about democracy, democratizing of the United Nations. In 84 to enhance transparency in 2016. Earlier we talked about harmonization. What you see in nation states is being replicated globally, internationally, using the United Kingdom and NATO and other third sectoral international bodies. In effect, to enhance transparency in I need to know that governments are actually public or private or third sector. They are all governments. They are just split into 3 legal entities. There's a government consisting of public, private, and third sector. And this is local, national, and global. In an effort to enhance transparency, like I said before, in 2016, the organization held its first public debate between candidates for Secretary General. On the 1st January 2017, Portuguese diplomat Antonio Guterres, who had previously served as United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, became the 9th Secretary General. Guterres has highlighted several key goals for his administration, including an emphasis on diplomacy for preventing conflicts more effectively, peacekeeping efforts, and streamlining the organization to be more responsive and versatile to international needs. On the 13th of June 2019, the United Nations signed a strategic partnership framework with the World Economic Forum in order to jointly accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Thank you for watching this video. I've been talking about the United Nations and looking at its brief history, and we are continuing with this discourse next time. But the context of our discussing these propositions is in terms of the cost of living crisis, which I propose to talk about from the beginning at the outset of my program on this YouTube channel. And I've been doing that for now coming to 10 months, which has been really exciting. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed. Share with family and friends. Watch the videos as much as you can. The best way to grow this channel is to subscribe, watch the videos, share with family and friends, and support me and my channel. If you like the topic, if you don't like the topic, support it anyway. Talk to me, leave a comment below and let me know what you're thinking. If you have ideas, well and good. We are a small project. We are set to grow. I'm optimistic and I'm determined to use this opportunity to talk about the things I care about. I've been talking about the cost of living because it's a crisis. It is continuing. People need to know what's important in their life. And once more, thank you for your patience. If you have watched up to this time, give yourself a pat in the back. You have done amazingly well with this channel. Thank you. See you in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.